Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly, as we hear from John and Waiting. Where we're going, we don't need roads, and if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show, and if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
And here we are with Rewind-A-Dynamite coming at you on another Wednesday night. John Pollock and Wei Ting here with you. How are you, Wei?
Doing all right, John. Yeah. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing superb.
Superb. Okay.
Yeah.
Any particular reason why?
It's the middle of the week. Nice day out. Was it a nice day out today?
No, it was a terrible day.
Actually. It was raining a lot, but then the sun came out at the end.
For like an hour, maybe.
All right. Well,
rain could be a good
I like too. Rain. When I'm inside, rain's wonderful. It's very calming. Okay. Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
What did you get up to today? How's the car?
Not good. Yeah.
Oh,
same situation. No real update. I am waiting. I don't know how much people care about to update something like this, but I'm at the point where I'm probably going to just shell out the $2,000 on top of everything I've already paid. So, yeah. So that's sort of the update. But yeah, otherwise a good day. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well that's good to hear. We're going to talk about Dynamite tonight. We are also going to hear from Carmelo Hayes, our final in the cavalcade of WWE chats that we had conducted over last Friday. So that's going to be coming at you in just a little bit. Also, on Thursday, I'm going to be releasing an interview with Lenita Erickson, who's a very interesting figure in the final months of WCW, where she came into the company after being hired by Brad Siegel and was assigned to the power plant. And she thought that she was going there and she would have some kind of on-screen role. It kind of wasn't defined. And then she ends up, like, this is something like right out of a movie where J.J. Dillon is working out of the power plant and he's got like no communication with Brad Siegel. He doesn't know what's going on. And he thinks, okay, you've been hired by Brad Siegel. You're obviously here to help me. And Lenita just goes with it. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm here for. And all of a sudden, she is given access to all the books, and suddenly she is part of this group that is trying to buy WCW, one of the offers that comes their way. So if you want to go behind the scenes into the final months of WCW, the Fusion deal falling apart, the purchase by Vince McMahon, and someone who was kind of just there in the midst of all of this in such a bizarre way, Lenita Erickson will be chatting with myself on Thursday. This will be coming out at noon Eastern time, and you can read more about Lenita Erickson in Guy Evans' book, and you will hear from her. Why was she not on Who Killed WCW? You will find out in this interview. So that's coming your way. Also, Wei and I dropped a special double shot on Tuesday night, getting together to chat about WrestleMania XL, Behind the Curtain, which had an XL amount of ads built in to these 60 minutes. But we gave our thoughts on the finished product of the making of WrestleMania 40, the main event on both nights, and this very unlikely meme that has come out of this documentary with Dwayne Johnson, with this image, and that people have just run with. But yes, all of our thoughts can be contained. A nice, digestible 40-minute show from myself and Wei.
Yeah, just our thoughts really about the documentary itself, but also the entire situation. You know, several months removed now. What exactly happened? Some theories that still exist out there. Did this documentary necessarily clear everything up? Well, listen to us talk about it.
Were there still questions coming out of this? There were some. We go through all of that stuff. And then coming up this weekend, we've got Rewind to SmackDown on Friday. Collision Course returns on Saturday. And Sunday, we're going to be releasing our Wrestling Media Summit. Could you spend your Sunday with a better option, entertainment-wise, than the Wrestling Summit? We've got Wei Ting on the panel with Brandon Thurston, Stephanie Chase, and Benno from the Grapple Spotlight podcast. So the five of us will be chatting about a topic near and dear to everyone's heart. That is wrestling media discussion, which I know everyone just, they can't get enough of. So that will be coming your way on Sunday. Also dropping before that, Deadpool 1 review on Thursday on MCU Later. JP Houlihan, the great JP, is going to be joining Rich Fan at WH Park. I'm a little behind on the viewing. I have not finished Logan yet, so I'm falling a bit behind here. I got to do some catching up.
Oh, you have I'd say what, a month before that movie comes out, maybe less than a month. So
less than a month
you got
until
time.
it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And Way is going to be doing Deadpool 2 later this month, I understand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So look at that. Okay, well, catch all of that, postwrestlingcafe.com and postwrestling.com for all our latest shows. Let's go to a few news items. I guess the most interesting news item today is Stephanie Vaquer, who wrestled at Arena Coliseo on Tuesday night, beating Tessa Blanchard. And then afterwards, it very much felt like a send-off with the two embracing and Stephanie kind of doing her goodbye to the audience. Well, it was reported over the weekend out of Mexico that it looked like she would be going to either WWE or AEW, but she was being pulled from this Saturday's Fantastica Mania event happening in San Jose. And I think that tipped everyone off that, well, if she was going to AEW is probably not pulling her from a partner show. So that kind of left one option, unless there was some, unless she was like just leaving the industry for some time. But Fightful reporting that she was in fact backstage at Heatwave on Sunday in Toronto. And as a result, after this goodbye match on Tuesday, well, today, Shawn Michaels officially tweeted, "Welcome to the WWE family. We will see you in Orlando." And that kind of sets everything up. So I'd also encourage people to go to luchablog.com, as the Cubs fan has a kind of a great breakdown of the whole situation going on as well. Great resource, of course, for Lucha Libre news. But there you go, Stephanie Vaquer. Like, this had to have come together real quick, way, because it's only a week ago we were talking about this Mercedes Moné Stephanie Vaquer match, and now she is WWE bound and obviously did herself a lot of favors and is, moving herself to Orlando.
That match at Forbidden Door, I mean, was one of the standout matches, and I would say of all the people on that card, she might have been the person to, I think, make the most catch maybe the most attention from people who might not have seen her before. Clearly she was already somebody on WWE's radar for this to come together, but I have to think that a performance like that really took things over the edge and probably got her significant offers from both companies. This was not necessarily a move I had expected. I thought, like, okay, she'd be AEW bound, but I didn't expect a move to WWE to come so soon. And I'm happy, so happy for her, the fact that she was able to, out of that match, and I'm sure her body of work prior to that, was able to garner that level of attention and, maybe a little bit of a bidding war to put herself into a much better position in her life. I think it's wonderful news.
Yeah, of course, she was not just holding on to the CMLL championship, which she has vacated, but as well, she was part of the tag champions with Zeuxis, who we had also just seen on AEW. So vacating both belts. And what's interesting is, being pulled from this Fantastica Mania card. Like, typically you look at WWE and you could understand them maybe pulling her. WWE also has events in Mexico City and Monterrey this Saturday and Sunday. Would not be out of the realm of possibility that they could announce this to the crowd on the weekend, or have her there in some form or fashion in Mexico City or in Monterrey or even on both nights.
Totally. Absolutely. So now you're looking at, like the fact that it was Shawn announcing this, and I think, as we all might have expected, would suggest that she would make her entry into NXT first. Yes. And now you're talking about an NXT roster consisting of both Stephanie Vaquer and Julia. And who knows, and all the incredible NIL talents that they have coming up. So they've really kind of risen that level of experience very quickly, and I think it just adds to the incredible momentum that NXT is continuing to experience.
Well, that's a good segue, because Tuesday's episode coming off of Heatwave featured several appearances by TNA talent. First, we had Wes Lee, who was contemplating his future and was about to state that he was just going to be stepping away after this loss to Obafemi, when Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz, identified as Zachary Wentz, Nash Carter is no more, returns to the Performance Center, and they came out, and we got a Rascalz reunion. We even got an explanation backstage that when it's Wesley and Zachary Wentz, it's MSK, but when it's the three of them, it's the Rascalz, and they will be taking on Gallus next week. So this was like a cool moment that they had. And I mean, this crowd in Orlando, like we talk about it, like they are an amazing crowd. Like they will go nuts for anything that is presented to them. And I'm not like downgrading this. It's just, we are talking about several hundred fans. Like this could be a dead atmosphere, but it's not when they do this stuff. Like when a main roster person shows up, when a Joe Hendry shows up, like this crowd just goes wild. And you've got to imagine a lot of them are repeat attendees on a weekly basis. And yet they still come off lively. Like I could imagine like having some really dead crowds week after week after week in this very small performance center by relative standards.
I have to imagine I don't know if it's exactly the same people, but I have to imagine it's several of the same people, if not at least the same type of atmosphere that they cultivated all those years at Full Sail. You know, it feels like a community that is very in tune with professional wrestling, very in tune with other wrestling promotions, and that's really, really benefited all of these TNA appearances, including this one. They've made every TNA appearance in NXT. They've made every one of those guys feel like stars, you know, like bigger stars than I think you would imagine. Like Zachary Wentz, I feel like is a bigger star coming back here than he was as Nash Carter, simply because, I mean, you know, as you're entering through like a forbidden door, so to speak, there's just that level of like unexpected excitement attached to you. There's a bit of an aura attached to you. And what they're doing right now with their partnership with TNA is, I think, really benefiting everybody involved.
Also on the show, they had set up a tag match where it was going to be Ethan Page and Sean Spears against Trick Williams and Javon Evans, but Brooke Jensen took out Javon Evans, so that left Trick Williams without a partner, and they certainly led you into the direction. This was kind of similar to Monday night with the return of Rhea Ripley, where they were certainly leading you in the direction. And
this was even more blatant.
Well, with Robert Stone, it was right down to the catchphrase of saying his name.
They showed his face.
Did they show his face?
Yeah. As Trick was doing the interview and then he left, they flashed the Joe Hendry meme.
These things are so quick. I missed. I only heard the Robert Stone tease, and I thought that was like pretty blatant.
Plus, he was all over the promos.
Well, it was a smart way to do it and let people know what was coming. So Hendry arrived, got another great reaction, and they gave him the pin on Sean Spears as well.
It's really incredible, honestly. I think that's going to be at least one of the sort of low-key stories of, 2024 is WWE's willingness to, like, who would have ever thought this relationship with TNA would turn into something like this? Okay, we went from not mentioning the promotion at all to, like mentioning the promotion and then having Jordan Grace appear at the Royal Rumble, Mickie James appear at the Royal Rumble. Now they're putting over their talent in main events. And seemingly building to like title matches with them. And I mean, the bigger story, I suppose, in all of this is that TNA is at a level now where they're not really any sort of threat, and like loaning their guys is only a benefit to them. And at the end of these contracts, it's very clear that these guys are very likely to, make their transition to the WWE. But it's just an interesting evolution of that relationship and seeing how they are using TNA to really kind of make NXT even feel that much more exciting.
Well, it's certainly helping with NXT. Like we saw with just the tease a few weeks ago with that battle royal of who's going to show up in the battle royal, and those first few weeks, even with like, I know this is not TNA specific, but when you had Ethan Page coming in and you did have Jordan Grace, which was a TNA export, like they felt really fresh on this program. And the question will be, does it go both ways? Like, is there going to be that engagement the other way around? Not to this level, but like a Charlie Dempsey going to TNA, is it going to increase interest for at least some people to check out TNA? We'll see. Like I don't think this is the NXT effect, but they have sold a strong amount of tickets for the Slammiversary show coming up in Montreal. Like they're at around, like they've done really well by a TNA standard for a pay-per-view, and we will see like what, if any, kind of reciprocal impact they get.
I don't know if like the reactions to like a Joe Hendry or a Jordan Grace mean that people have been watching Impact, but I think at the very least it means that they are aware of, you know, the very talented members, your stars in the making on those rosters. And by the point, I mean, we saw this with AJ Styles all those years back. You know, even though people might not necessarily have been watching the product. Yes, he was in New Japan at the time, but most people knew him from TNA. People at least know the names enough to recognize them as stars. And in the case of Joe Hendry, they clearly knew a lot more than just his name.
Also on the show, worth noting, Cedric Alexander and Ashanti the Adonis appear to be NXT bound, and it looks like we got the write-off of Damon Kemp.
Yes.
Via a trunk of a car, where he was placed into the trunk as Miles Bourne, Charlie Dempsey, and Tavion Heights bid him farewell and then drove off, and Ren Sinclair caught them in the act of, I guess we're led to believe, like, he's been killed.
Dumped over the bridge somewhere.
Of some sort. So that was NXT on Tuesday night. We will get to the ratings in a minute.
We'll review with Braden Davey right now on the free feed, of course.
WWE announced on Tuesday the hiring of Joe Tessitore, who is a broadcaster with ESPN and ABC. He has been there for decades, mainly calling like college football and top-ranked boxing. I guess just overall, I'm kind of curious your thought that he will be part of a 3-man team with Corey Graves and Wade Barrett. And this is a very WWE type of signing, especially in this current era. I've got to say, though, I don't think we've like focused enough on how seamlessly Corey Graves transitioned to that role. That, like, at the beginning, it was like a little awkward just to hear him in the play-by-play role. But I can't remember how quickly it was weeks in that it just felt like they completed that transition, and that is not an easy one to make. And now he's kind of going to have to be in the like weird like co-analyst role with Wade Barrett. And like with all like Joe Tessitore, he's a very talented broadcaster, and I feel like he has a pretty good handle on WWE from some of the ESPN crossover work that they've done. But it's always the question of someone that has never called pro wrestling before coming in, doing it on this stage. Like we have seen how tough that transition has been for some.
Certainly. Yeah. Just on the Corey Graves note, I mean, I do think like he has impressed me, you know, with how well he's transitioned to the role. However, like seeing him on the PLE's call matches with Cole continues to remind me that his greatest value to the company is not as a play-by-play guy, but as a color guy. I'm interested to see, like, okay, if Barrett is more the heel-leaning color commentator, what room does that leave Graves? You know, because so much of his shtick was playing heel color commentator. Oftentimes that, like, being a babyface color guy might be the worst role, you know, somebody could have on a 3-man booth. So I'm curious to see what he does, but I think this whole thing has shown maybe how adaptable and how talented he is as just a general broadcaster within professional wrestling. I think I've not seen, you know, any of the sports that Joe Tessitore has called, but from what I hear from people who have, they feel this is a much maybe this person has perhaps a much higher chance of success than compared to an Adnan Virk or I'm sorry, the
Kevin
MMA.
Patrick or Jimmy Smith.
You know,
But Jimmy Smith, I thought, had like
passable. He was okay. It was passable. But now I think like wrestling fans can sniff bullshit really quickly, and I think we knew an Adnan Virk or Jimmy Smith were not necessarily fans before entering here. Is Joe's Tessitore somebody who could pass that test? You know, from what I hear, I think he claims that he is a longtime fan, and I think people who are more familiar with his work would be able to tell us whether or not that's the case. But the commentary work will show a lot. How closely is he tied into the current storylines? How caught up is he, you know, with everything that's going on? I mean, a professional like him, I expect maybe to do plenty of research and have the help to guide him through it. And certainly having a mainstream name attached to your product, it probably offers benefits that you and I aren't necessarily aware of at this point.
I mean, it gets them attention in kind of the sports media world. I think like they really love these kinds of stories, and I think WWE likes like that sort of like that kind of angle to things, to their broadcasts. And they have just stated this summer, they have not determined what the start date, or they have not disclosed what the start date is for Joe Tessitore. Raw on Monday night did 1,750,000 viewers and a 0.59 in the demo. So they were down 7% in viewership, down 5% in the demo. But of everything that was listed on Programming Insider, this topped everything on cable, including The Bachelorette and American Ninja Warrior. Are you keeping up on The Bachelorette?
No, not this season. No.
How about The Bear? How far up have you launched into season 3 yet?
I'm at episode 5 of The Bear.
Oh, you're about to watch episode 6.
Oh, is that the big one?
It's a good. I don't know if it's the big one, but it's really good.
Okay. All right.
NXT on Tuesday, 656,000 viewers and a 0.24. This was one of NXT's best numbers this year, highest since June 18th. And this was coming off that really poor number last week, which was 2 days before the 4th of July. So from last week, they were up 21% in viewers, and they were up a remarkable 60% in the 18 to 49 audience after falling last week. So a strong number this week, but it's also coming off a weaker than normal number. Last week was their lowest since the 4th of July the previous year. And in Canada, Raw was actually number 1 among sports on Monday night. It was a bit of a lighter night, but there was still soccer going on, but no Jays game. Tuesday night, NXT did 101,000 viewers, and this was against the Canada-Argentina soccer game that did over 2.5 million viewers in the country as Argentina prevailed 2-0. Sorry, Canada.
Next time.
Next time. That's it.
You got him next time.
All right. There are all of your ratings notes. And you know what? Now it is time to hear from Carmelo Hayes, one of the latest additions on the SmackDown roster since the draft, who we actually got to see balancing between roster call-up and also sticking around in NXT. And we brought that up in the interview. So again, this was conducted on Friday going into Money in the Bank weekend. Here with Carmelo Hayes heading into Money in the Bank weekend in Toronto. First of all, Carmelo, I want to go back to last week. It was Madison Square Garden, sold out. Is that your first time at Madison Square Garden as part of the main roster?
Dude, first time in general at Madison Square Garden, yeah.
And what was that experience like? Does it really have just the aura, the feel that kind of separates it from any other buildings?
Yo, it was cool as hell, man. I was walking, earlier in the day, and I just saw Triple H standing in the ring by himself. And I walked over to him, and it was like, asking him, tell me everything about all your experience, about his debut, and then he was talking to me about the curtain call, and so I got like that little tidbit of all these cool moments. He's like right over here and right over here and right over there, and I was just as a fan, I was like, this is just cool. But as a performer, I didn't perform there, but just being in the in the building was super cool, man.
What's the kind of like communication you have with Paul Levesque? Is it kind of like an open door policy? Do you have that access at TV on days that I'm sure are really busy and chaotic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go out of my way to say, hey, Hunter, if I can see he's busy, but, there's opportunity, of course, I'm going to try and talk. One, I've known Hunter since I started. He was a big proponent for me early on. He gave me a shot right away. And, he's been very vocal in helping with my success along with Sean. So I mean, but now it's just kind of just building the rapport and, just letting him get to know me some too,
So earlier this year, you had the balancing act of wrapping things up at NXT while also being introduced on the main roster.
Yeah.
Once you post WrestleMania, Stand and Deliver, what was sort of your mindset of, are there little changes I have to make when I'm coming up here, things that are going to work in NXT that I have to change up here? What's that kind of process? Because everyone's going to have different experiences and kind of testing things out to a larger audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of wild because, coming from NXT, everybody knew who I was. I was the man. I won everything. It was a smooth ride, right? I mean, straight to the top. And then here, starting brand new, where I have to reintroduce myself to a lot of these fans that have never seen me, and then on top of that, going against all their favorite wrestlers, where they're rooting for them, and they could care less who they're in the ring with, So I'm just reintroducing myself to a brand new audience. I think it's been the biggest challenge.
So much was built up with yourself and Trick Williams. How did that culminate for you guys, both at Stand and Deliver and the follow-up match? And do you think that that's something that, when did you guys realize that, man, we have something very special here? Was that very early days for you two?
Believe it or not, the plan was never to do the one-on-one. It was never that. It was never even really to break up. I think what had happened was between the two of us, we were both like, hey, I want a shot on my own, because at that time, he had been by my side, and we were, cheating every match, and and I was now, a baby face, or however you want to put it. I was a good guy, and that dynamic was just changing. So it was kind of like, well, hey, how are we going to both become individuals? And at the same time, I didn't want him to be like my side guy all the time. I wanted him to get some reps. I wanted him to get in the ring and build his name up as well. So, I mean, it culminated by accident, but it ended up being the best accident that could have happened for NXT.
My last question for you is, as you departed NXT, we saw television numbers going up. You guys are doing great attendance on the road. You were there you come into NXT and boom, it flips to the 2.0 era. People didn't know what this was going to be. Did you guys kind of feel vindicated by the end of what you guys grew, this completely curveball of an idea, and what it turned into, and where the brand standed by the time you exited?
Yeah, I mean, they stripped all the experience out of NXT, they stripped a lot of the, heavy hitters that had been there for a while. So, I mean, a lot of us younger guys, we understood what it was. Like, we were like, hey, it's just us. Like, I knew I wasn't, I was like, hey, that top spot is wide open. I'm taking it. And obviously, Braun, and then had to get through Braun and stuff. So, yeah, but we knew what it was, and we were super glad we got to do that.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, bro.
All the best this weekend.
Appreciate you, John.
All right, that was Carmelo Hayes just prior to Money in the Bank weekend. So I've got to say, like sometimes these interview days, like they're very tough. You have to, like, these guys are talking to, and women are talking to so many people, and without question, like, I'm sure they get asked questions over and over, and you have to do them in a very quick amount of time. I thought the three that we got, I was very happy with all three interviews for different reasons. Carmelo was great there in like 4 minutes, what we were able to cover.
I thought so too. Yeah. I thought you never know what you're really going to get with professional wrestlers, especially like when they're working for the WWE. Are you going to get people that are going to be speaking completely in character, and just kind of like giving you, I don't know, comedy answers? But I would say for the most part, for all three of them, you got I think pretty thoughtful answers. I think Carmelo especially, actually, somebody who just felt like he was speaking completely as himself, not necessarily playing a role. And I found him very engaging. But of course, it takes a great interviewer to bring that out as well. So I think you gotta give yourself a bit of credit.
A professional mic stand, John Pollock. Well, you know what, Way, what you didn't hear part of that interview is Carmelo said, hey, whenever I want to go online to watch any of the wrestling events that are happening worldwide, you know what NordVPN gives me the ability to? And I said, Carmelo, what does NordVPN give you the ability to do? He says, when I get NordVPN, it's nothing but net.
Here at Post, we love using NordVPN to help us unlock cheaper prices for pay-per-views and access geo-block services like AEW+. I also personally use it every time I'm out working on my laptop and using public Wi-Fi. It's an extra level of protection I like to have to make sure my data isn't being sniffed from malicious users on the same network. If you have any concerns about browsing speeds, NordVPN happens to be CNET's fastest VPN of 2024, clocking an average speed loss of just 11.1% compared to Surfshark's 17% and ExpressVPN's 24.8%. It costs less than $3 a month when you sign up through nordvpn.com/postwrestling, where Nord has offered our listeners 4 bonus months on top of all 2-year plans. And just for this campaign, all 2-year plans come with up to 20 gigabytes of travel data through Saley, a global eSIM service you can use in over 150 countries. Again, nordvpn.com/postwrestling, 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not happy. Get your bonus months, get your free Saley data voucher, and let Nord know you found them through us.
NordVPN.com/postwrestling. Let them know.
Like the song says?
That's it. Tonight we go to Calgary, Alberta, the Scotiabank Saddledome. So we were at the Canadian Tire Center on Monday. We had the Scotiabank Arena last weekend for WWE, and now it's the Scotiabank Saddledome for AEW. So everyone's learning these Canadian arenas. I mean, just the most magnificent named arenas that you could find.
Yeah, we're not a very
We are just
bunch,
corporate, right? Just the corporate overlords that just have taken over these fine buildings.
What place isn't, though?
Where we're going for SummerSlam, Cleveland Browns Stadium.
No one's taken over that yet?
It is currently unoccupied.
Wow.
That could change at any point, but as of now, it's Cleveland Browns Stadium.
Okay.
I like it.
Interesting.
So tonight we have Excalibur, Tony Schiavone, and Nigel McGuinness. And I'm sure everyone was thinking the same thing, and that was Nigel McGuinness is here on commentary for the Bryan Danielson match, and they gave a great explanation playing off of last week that Taz got to the city and he has been banned from the Saddle Dome by Chris Jericho by request, and he was not allowed to take part. And I was like, that's a perfectly logical reason to have Taz off the broadcast. It gives you a reason to put Nigel here. And I thought they have set the table so well here for what I think everyone thought was going to happen that ultimately did not. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because the first segment saw Will Ospreay coming out after they recapped MJF's heel turn, and Will states that he was appalled last week, but not surprised by MJF's actions. He's the most insecure person in this company, and he saw Daniel Garcia rising in popularity and wanted to stop him in his tracks. And Garcia is still at home without feeling in his arms, and he might never come back. Ospreay says how he doesn't use his ADHD as an excuse to be a prick like MJF does, and says there's a few reasons that Will doesn't like me. Number one, your bidding war of 24 didn't go so well because Tony Khan paid me rather than people trying to bury AEW. Now, does this quite make sense? Because the whole story was that MJF chose to stay here. Are we thinking that he had no competing offer and he just signed here for a reduced contract?
I think that's the insinuation.
Is that the implication here?
Yeah,
is that no one wanted MJF, so Tony got him for a steal?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he says that I've got more talent in my left nut than MJF has in his entire body. And then what I can only imagine was him trying to like jiggle his nuts on television.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's free now that Daniel Garcia is gone. And says that he is what AEW's identity is supposed to be and calls MJF a selfish prick. I've been here cleaning up other people's mess, and now I found the guy I have to clean up after. And he says it's been the same old shit from MJF for the last 5 years. So he calls out MJF. He wants to fight now. And MJF's music plays, but he is not there. He appears on the screen, sipping wine, and says he deserves better than the people in Calgary. And this upset the Calgarians. He calls Will Ospreay a joke, the flavor of the month, and you are a dancing toy monkey. And says that the people will eventually tire of your routine, then toss you into the trash, whereas I am not replaceable. You will be replaced by the next flippy guy, and I don't wrestle for fun. And he proposes that instead of tonight, they have a title match next week. And we won't be wrestling for stars. Instead, I'll punch you in the face until you're seeing them. And Ospreay accepts. The only way you can in AEW, he says. I'll see you next week, you little bitch. So we are getting Will Ospreay against MJF. Realistically, we should have seen this. When they booked this arena, North Little Rock, Arkansas was the obvious location for the first Will Ospreay MJF match. And I'm kicking myself that I didn't realize this when we looked at the calendar. But that is set for next week, which is episode 250.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if any of us calculated that the Simons Bank Arena would be home to Dynamite 250. We've seen Tony book like this before, book a big match that you think is leading to a pay-per-view, but instead pushes it onto TV. And I think in most cases it's leading to a rematch that can get to a pay-per-view, while at the same time peaking a big number for your television. I think, I don't think it hurts. I still think this is going to be the Wembley main event. And I think if they can, at this point, get a strong rating out of promoting something like this while building to a match at Wembley, I don't dislike it.
You think this will be the main event of All In?
No, I think Swerve will be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is announced for next week. And
yeah. Oh, I also think we should talk about, I think, the promos themselves. I think Ospreay is he's amazing. He's cutting promos like this as if he's been doing it for decades, and he's standing against MJF that I think many people would consider maybe the best promo in the company right now. And he's doing a great job of playing like a baby face that is standing toe to toe on the microphone with him. He had some great lines in here. And I'm very curious to see a lot more of this build because I don't think it ends next week.
Yeah, no, I think we're just beginning this this whole program. So I thought it was a great segment to open the show and maybe a bit of an unexpected announcement for next week's match. But listen, like we talk about the fact that when it comes to television, like I think they should have this very aggressive attitude, and this episode 250, like they are stacking the deck for next week's show. So then we got a video for Danielson and Hangman, their backstory that they are 1-1-1 in their past 3 matches. Jeff Jarrett is on the stage as the enforcer and turns his back when Hangman comes out, and Hangman spits in front of him as he passes the trophy and the belt for the Owen Hart Cup. And that is what we are kicking off with, Danielson and Hangman. And we have Danielson in pink and black, and Hangman, who was the lone final member of either tournament not to get the Owen Hart tribute gear.
No, and nor should he have.
No. So early on, we see Danielson landing a tope suicida, and he's grabbing his neck in pain that he might have a stinger. And Danielson gets posted from the apron, and man, Nigel is just ramping it up. As Danielson gets posted, he is busted open. Nigel's calling for the match to be called off. It's like, it's blood. There's blood. And once upon a time, this would have been Nigel's call for the absolute end of the match, if not the entire show. But in this world, they remind him Hangman bled just as badly on Saturday during Collision. And Nigel just says, well, I feel Hangman's in much better condition than Bryan Danielson. So Danielson keeps getting beaten, and he bled a lot in this match. But he manages the label lock. Page gets to the rope. Danielson hit a spider suplex, and then a diving headbutt misses. So Page gets him into the crossface until a rope break. They go through their second picture-in-picture, and after two simultaneous rolling elbows, both go down, and Hangman is busted open from his wound from Saturday night. So both men now bleeding, and they meet in the center. They're trading chops, and Page manages to take off the padding around the metal portion of the turnbuckle and knocks Danielson into it, hits a tombstone for a kick out, then tries for the Orihara moonsault, is stopped as Danielson tips him over onto the edge of the apron, and Danielson hits a springboard somersault to the floor that Excalibur has not seen in years, and he's holding his neck, and he is just gets up to land these brutal head kicks before Page manages a pile driver onto the floor. And again, it is piling on the trauma to Bryan Danielson's neck. So you got Doc Samson and Jeff Jarrett checking in on him, and Page pie faces Jarrett as Danielson breaks the count, lands the Busaiku, but he can't make the cover. And each are on their feet after German's another Busaiku attempt misses Hangman and takes out referee Paul Turner. So after a discus lariat by Page, he starts whipping him with his belt, and Jarrett enters. Page is shoving him, and Jarrett reveals underneath his shirt he's got a referee's shirt on, so he takes over as the ref. And the label lock is applied onto Danielson, and it looks like he is going out, but he keeps the arm up and is able to escape. And you've got Danielson with the belt wrapped around his neck, and it's tied as he takes a buckshot to the back of the neck, another buckshot, and then after an O'Connor roll, Page applies the label lock, and this is when the arm doesn't go down, and Danielson manages a cradle counter to get the cover and wins the match after 25 plus minutes, as Bryan Danielson will be advancing to All In. Just a terrific match.
Excellent match. Flawlessly executed, very well designed. I mean, these two have had great matches, but the character dynamics are very different this time around, primarily because you're getting to see a much more aggressive heel Hangman Page, who I thought was the highlight of this match. Bryan Selling was fantastic as always, but I think Page's intensity in this match was, to me, what really made it stand out. I'm enjoying this heel Hangman character a lot so far. It feels like a top shelf, type of heel. A finish that surprised me and might have surprised a lot of people, because I think they've done such a great job with Page, specifically talking about wanting to face Swerve, and that scenario feeling like such a perfect title match for Wembley. And on the other hand, Nigel, you can argue maybe doing too great of a job building up to that Bryan Danielson match all year to have us convinced that was going to be the direction for Danielson. That's not the direction. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, they've gone on, like, it's been a year of this. there's got to be some payoff to this at some point.
Could be a spot, sure. Yeah.
Spot? I've waited a year for a spot.
So, I mean, we have to ask the question now of like, was Nigel doing that because he knew he would be cleared and that he would be booked in a match, or was he just doing it as a part of the character to make his role more entertaining?
So Nigel is not in a scenario where he is like, it's not like he was not cleared, and that's like he voluntarily like stepped away. So to my knowledge, there's nothing medically that is stopping him.
So I guess the other question would be, is his name big enough to have a Bryan Danielson match at Wembley Stadium?
All fine questions, Way. A great conversation to have a year ago.
Yeah, I don't think there's harm. Like just just as the same way he plays favorites, you know, with Mariah May. He plays he's a character who is a heel commentator who has people he dislikes. Given their past history, I mean, I think that it's been a lot of fun, you know, having Danielson be sort of the target of Nigel. It's
great fun, but it culminates with this guy finally having it and just hitting that Busaiku at commentary and nailing this guy.
Well, that would be a spot at the end of a match.
Okay, well, it's a lot of investment for all of this.
But I don't think Nigel was doing the character with, at least like, not entirely the purpose of building to the match. Well, we don't know. Maybe that's exactly what he wants. And you know, I believe there are teases of like, I don't know. I heard somewhere that he might have tried to get back training. But like, clearly it's not the right direction for Wembley. I don't think it discounts that he could be physically involved somehow. I think he almost should.
Is Danielson, as he's winding down his career, having this shot at the championship, the stronger story, especially to move tickets for it at Wembley, than a Hangman rematch with Swerve?
Yes, I do. I think Hangman Swerve is huge, is big. But Danielson is a bigger mainstream name. And if you have like the sort of sentimentality of him ending his full-time reign, full-time run, whatever that means, going for the championship in the biggest stage possible, I think it sells a bit more tickets, sells a bit more interest. What about you? What do you think?
I mean, I think Danielson going for the title is very strong. I'm very perplexed at times by Bryan Danielson, and not that it's been done on the program itself, but it was only a few weeks ago that he was doing media, and he was just saying like, I don't want to be champion. Like I can't handle that kind of like pressure at this point of things. And it was just like, I don't know if that is I'm sure that, like, that's the guy's honest thoughts about things, but kind of makes it hard for you to like root for this when that's like the thought process here.
Maybe he's just downplaying the possibility of him winning. So by the time,
like, I wouldn't have imagined him doing that interview before WrestleMania 30 of like, you know, I really don't want that extra pressure of being champion. Like, that's not a role I need to have in this company.
Well, I wonder if he knew he was about to headline Wembley going for the championship by the time he did that interview. I'm not really sure.
Well, I wish he did. I would hope he knew.
As a member of
headlining the biggest show of the year.
As a member of creative, you would think that maybe they would know. But at the same time, it's like I don't take too much stock in like what a guy says, you know, in a real life at a character interview versus like. I don't expect Danielson to beat Swerve to win the championship, but I expect a great story to be told on the way there. And as long as he cut those promos telling us about how important it means for him to go for this championship one last time and convince me that the character really wants that championship, then I'm on board for it.
Well, that's what you need for this. And let's not forget that 2 weeks later you have another pay-per-view with All Out, and you could have Hangman there as the ready-made challenger if he's put in some strong match at All In and is number one contender coming out, and you need a 2-week build. Like, Swerve and Hangman is a match you can do on 2 weeks notice.
That's a great point. Yeah. We also have Jeff Jarrett now suddenly and part of all this. I think they did a great job of folding him into the story of this main event match. I feel like I could safely assume that he wasn't necessarily a part of the plans from the beginning, but now that, you know, that interview and his whole run caught so much steam, I think they did a great job of folding him in. What do you see for Jarrett coming out of all this?
the last 5 minutes, and maybe this is because we've been focusing so much on WCW from 2000, was him turning heel and costing Danielson the match. Was that was just constantly going through my head of turning him heel here in Calgary. That's completely like the.
It would be Martha turning heel. That would be the swerve.
Oh my goodness. No, I mean, it was sort of like your consolation to have Jarrett attached here. I didn't think he was too like overbearing in the match. Like he didn't overshadow it. And it was just, you did like the nice presentation at the end here.
Hangman and Jarrett, it feels like it's a match that, you know, they could.
Who and Jarrett?
Hangman. Page.
A rematch?
A rematch, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially coming off of this. It feels like it's a hot enough thing that they could do on a TV.
Like Jarrett proved like he can be a really great babyface in this role. But I sort of see that role as sort of like your Dustin Rhodes character. Yes. Like he can be a great babyface, but there's a certain level that you're going to get to.
Well, sure. Yeah.
But
I'm
fine.
curious to see if they get it. Does he have a match at Wembley? You know, and if not Wembley, then I think at least All Out. Like I just want to see this version of Jarrett involved in some form of story. And I mean, where's Jay Lethal? You know, for instance, fit in all of this? Is it time to break up the group with the heels in the stable? Do we get Satnam Singh versus Jeff Jarrett?
Oh, we're not ready for that. That's all in next year. So, Jarrett just he meets with Martha at the front. They present the trophy and the belt to Danielson, and there was a great moment where Danielson was clearly aware he is drenched in blood, so he just like extended his hand, and Martha just leaned in for the hug. She was okay with getting a bit of plasma all over her cowboy hat. So,
she's hardcore.
That's it.
Yes.
Martha makes the presentation. There's an Owen chant, and then we get the graphic for Swerve versus Danielson at All In. Swerve walks out in the next segment with Nana and said that he had to silence doubt by beating Will Ospreay to prove he is the best in the world, congratulates Danielson, but notes that Danielson holds a win over Swerve and I hold on to grudges, and says how Danielson is on the downslide while I'm on top of AEW, and he was proposed an offer by the Elite to be in Blood and Guts, and he's here to confirm I will be joining Blood and Guts, but I will be on Team AEW, and I'm going to lead this team and do two things this year that Danielson couldn't, and that's beat Will Ospreay and lead Team AEW to victory over the Elite. And then shifts his focus to Kazuchika Okada and issues a challenge to him and states that the world champion is going to show you how to really make it rain. Bitch.
Of course, yes. I mean, it's funny when like he's mocking Okada for his use of the word. I thought Swerve came across really well here. You know, he gave us some big announcements packed into like, I don't know what, like 3-4 minutes of airtime. He has nothing but big matches coming up. You know, he's going to headline Wembley against Bryan Danielson for the championship. He's the leader, presumably, of Team AEW in their Blood and Guts matches against the Elite. And he's got a big TV match with Kazuchika Okada coming up next week. Like in this segment, Swerve
and really... definitely a Hangman match somewhere in the near future.
100%, yeah. So. This really felt to me like Swerve was the central figure of this show. And I really do think that Ospreay win has helped him so much, like, achieve this status. Like, probably would have had it anyway, but I just think having Ospreay out of the conversation of, like, you know, who is the top of the pecking order has really, really helped my perception of Swerve as the top guy.
There was a video for the Women's Owen Hart Cup final, which would headline the show, and then we get the latest drop from the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass with 2 times. And they mocked the Young Bucks' hairline, called them the leakers to the dirt sheets, a cancer to the wrestling business. And then we got old like indie photos of the Acclaimed and a 1993 8x10 photo of young Billy Gunn as a member of the Smoking Guns, and stating that Okada only came here for the money. Wei, you are more the expert in this field. How did this rank on a scale of WrestleMania the album to Kendrick?
Well, funny enough, like the last verse here from Castor like was modeled after Kendrick's last verse and Not Like Us a little bit. So I don't know, maybe jumping off of like the hype train off of Rap Beef a little bit, but the Acclaimed have done this, and I think Caster has done a really good job with all of these. But they're almost like, there's something strange in that, like, I'm seeing all this Joe Hendry stuff, and like he somehow garnered way more reaction than I would expect for somebody in TNA to for his song parodies. Caster, I think, like, legitimately does like really like good, music videos, but I don't see any buzz about them whatsoever. They're not really memorable. Like, they're clever lines, but like somehow they're not as effective in video form as they are just even when he's coming out and delivering them. So I respected it. I thought, like, there was like clever stuff in all of this. It was well done, well shot, well produced, but I don't know how many people will be talking about it after.
So this was no Rascalz and Bret Hart.
I don't know how many people talk about that one either.
Yeah. Not Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz, by the way.
No. Brett's other song, other than
Canada's
Right
secondary national anthem.
Yeah.
Samoa Joe and Chris Jericho had a Stampede street fight. Man, this was if only we had the late Ed Whalen to call this one. This is we had Jericho in the cowboy hat come out, and Joe took the cowboy hat and punched through the hat into Jericho's face, and then takes out Bryan Keith on the floor. Jericho tried to do a drop kick through the rope, which didn't go well, but then nails Joe into the rail. Jericho brings out his latest bag. This was one of horseshoes, and Joe catches Jericho and drops him onto the horseshoes and follows with a senton. These are like comedy spots, but man, I would not want to get dropped on hockey pucks. I wouldn't want to take a hockey puck to the face, and I wouldn't want to get dropped on horseshoes. These would like be very painful, and the crowd's laughing.
Right. I don't think they're entirely like comedy spots though. They are chosen. This goes back to like Jericho's thoughts about Mitch the Plant. Using Mitch the Plant to attack Dean Ambrose wasn't necessarily supposed to be done for laughs. It's a potted plant against a man's head. And I think like he's choosing all of these. Number one, yes, for a reaction from a local audience, but also to convey pain. Does it necessarily, like, is it still effective? You can argue if people are laughing at it. Are they taking the spot seriously? I don't know, but clearly you have a reaction, like you understand the pain involved in landing on horseshoes.
Maybe there's a lot of sympathy for the pain from a horseshoe. They brawled into the crowd. Joe then uses some popcorn, and they fight backstage, and then this was not a comedy spot. This everyone can sympathize with. Jericho throws hot coffee into the face of Samoa Joe.
Mm-hmm. Ask Regal.
Yeah. A cup of Joe into the face of Joe.
Very good.
He it goes for the Judas effect, but it's ducked, and the scalding skin of Samoa Joe is able to heal, and he manages a coquina clutch when Big Bill comes behind with a chair. Bryan Keith joins in, and Jericho has this belt buckle that was a gift from Martha that he had shown off online earlier in the day, and he uses the belt buckle to nail Joe in the face, and Bill chokeslams him onto this wooden pallet attached to a forklift, and Jericho gets into the forklift, which you technically do need a license for. And I'm like, is he just going to like take him back to the arena? No, he backs up, and then he just accelerates and hits the gas on this thing and drives him through this drywall, and Joe is out. The bell rings, and Justin Roberts has to announce the doctor has stopped the match at 12 and a half minutes. The crowd did not enjoy this finish, which they didn't even get to see in person. And Joe is stretchered out as the Learning Tree watch on. This was a very bizarre match, and featuring a forklift spot that was goddamn, was Joe very trusting of this man and his ability to drive one of these things on live television through a wall.
Well, I mean, a forklift doesn't go that fast, but I guess there are things.
But what could go wrong is not a small list.
Yes, right. Yeah. I mean, I found the match entertaining as a street fight. I think Joe is really great at playing like cool tough guy in this current babyface form, and that comes across really well in this sort of street fight. Jericho, as always, I think puts a lot of creativity into these sort of matches. It's the type of match that that I think can be done really well. But man, the stunt at the end I think was a bit of a risk in that I know they wanted something big to really kind of heat up this angle with. But I don't know if it came across as devastating to me as I think it was supposed to. Like it came across as like somebody
What did Jack Perry survive in Anarchy in the Arena to come back and win the match in? So it's like we have seen the bar pretty high that when it's only a forklift through some drywall.
Well, and this was like another one of those like very clearly like very thin pieces of drywall with like to enclose a room that doesn't really exist as well. I appreciate, I think, the attempt at like doing something big, you know, on the level of like, I think like what WWE has so famously done, you know, since the Attitude Era, like a big vehicular stunt, you know, like to really kind of set things off. But I think the line between like doing that well and doing that like and having it come across a bit cheap and corny is very, very thin, maybe as thin as that drywall. And it maybe for some people this worked, but I don't necessarily think it worked for me. But I do think like the direction of the learning tree and having them do way more sort of like serious, like threatening physical angles has been very good. But I'd argue they should just keep it to like real world physicality, like coming out with baseball bats or like, you know, like I don't know, like using whatever, a tree branch or something on Joe. I'm just saying. I think would be just as effective, you know, as driving somebody through the wall with a forklift.
This is going to build to a forest from the trees match, I think, somewhere in the outdoors.
A forest match, okay,
yeah,
interesting. Cinematic match, maybe.
Sure, why not? Claudio Castagnoli, Pac, Tomohiro Ishii, and Kyle Fletcher. I don't know if they were running late, but we got no entrances here. We just went right into this thing. This is maybe the most star-studded match with no entrances.
I think this is a, you know, recurring role at this point on AEW TV, right? Just have a big mid-card match without any significant storyline involved and just like 4 really, really excellent wrestlers and then just go. You almost don't need the entrances.
Yeah. The winner will get a international title match in the future. So we go right into things. Some of the highlights, Fletcher gets put into the sharpshooter, very easy spot on this show, and Pac comes off the top of the top rope elbow. So Fletcher's still in the sharpshooter as Pac applies the brutalizer, and it's Ishii forearming Claudio and then hits him with the vertical drop and a sliding D to Pac to rescue Fletcher. There's a huge lariat by Ishii onto Fletcher for a near fall. Fletcher is hit with the neutralizer. Fletcher was just taking everybody's punishment throughout. Pac hits Germans onto Ishii and Claudio, and then a black arrow to the back of Fletcher, applies the brutalizer for the submission. So Pac gets the win, as Don Callis was on commentary, leaves in disgust over Kyle Fletcher losing, and Pac explains all the failures he's had of late, but it's all in season. The bastard won't be denied his Wembley moment, and the bastard will be back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love the fact that like we continue to just have these matches. Like for all the complaints there are about like like maybe AEW not doing enough introduction of its characters or of its newcomers or like not providing enough story time for certain people. I think every show has a place for a match like this without any real storyline attached to it. Yes, they do have a title shot coming out of it, but still it's like there are enough people that just want to see great wrestling, and I think every one of these 2-hour shows has at least room for one thing without any significant storyline attachment to it, and just
there's so much
action.
placed on all of this. Like Monday, like I don't need a reason for Sheamus and Bronson Reed. Not to say that it was like this big classic match, but if those guys had gotten 15 minutes, it was going to be an excellent match. There's no history between them. It's just it's a great match, and we are watching within the context of a wrestling show that people wrestle, and you advance. That hopefully your wins and losses is at least at minimum like the foundation here of what, and we had a title shot attached here.
And it provided that for Pac here. Like you said, John, you know, you hope that coming out of this, it does put a spotlight on one significant person coming out of it. And they did that for Pac. You know, I said last week, I think Pac is so consistent in these sort of matches. He's so impressive, and we almost like anticipate anytime he's announced it with another big name. But I find myself tough to get emotionally invested in his matches. And I feel like a lot of that comes down to like, he does these videos, right? Like he typically like he shoots them somewhere in a dark room, and then like he'll cut these really cool promos. but there's not really that much like lasting sustained storyline coming out of them for me. This at least seems like they are hinting at like Pac really wanting to get on Wembley Stadium this year, and him cutting the promo live in arena, I think increases his presence as well. So to me, like it did achieve a different level of elevation for Pac.
What if this had become the Global Glory 5-way, and this is the match that Bruce would be able to manage his way into?
Okay, then maybe he should have entered the Owen, and he should have won the main event instead.
That would have been it. I'll give a live mic to Bruce on Dynamite. We'd still be on the air.
We're seeing a lot of Ishii on Dynamite lately. Do you think I don't know what his New Japan schedule is coming up, but
not G1. So there you go.
Right.
Like,
so do you think he stays for an extended period of time while the G1 is going on?
So they haven't announced like the undercards for any of these G1 matches. Like obviously they will, like you've got your 5 tournament matches per show, and then they'll load up like tags and stuff. But a lot of that's going to be just people in the other blocks. So I could very well see like an Ishii not even part of the tour in any way. And if so, I mean, this guy, God forbid he has a rest for the summer, but if not...
This is a rest. Are you kidding me? Not having to do the G1
Send him
already?
to the wrestling epicenter, North Little Rock, Arkansas, because this guy wants to stay busy.
I mean...
But yes, to your question, if New Japan's not using him this summer, I'm sure AEW can find a role for Tomohiro Ishii.
Seems like a pretty good trade to me. You guys have Takeshita for 2 months. We'll take Tomohiro Ishii.
Just to do Tomohiro Ishii and Billy Gunn on a Rampage.
I would watch that. Sure.
I would absolutely watch it. That's what Rampage should be.
Just like
give me a lineup that I'm like, you're kidding me.
Randomizer matches, yes.
That's what I want. All right, next up, we had Renee backstage trying to get Hangman Page's attention. And man, we got some bass in Renee's voice here. She was not putting up with any of this. She's like, excuse me, can you show me some respect? This is nearly my response once when we were dealing with a particular wrestler backstage at an indie show who just put us off all night. I wouldn't even. Do you remember this?
I'm trying to remember who the wrestler was, but
I'll tell you after.
Yeah, I think I know. I know who
probably
you're talking about. Yeah.
He bangs on the door of the Elite. Okada comes to the door and won't let him in, but then the Bucks come out. They're telling Okada to relax, and Hangman just says, I'll do it. And they make it clear afterwards that this is his addition to Blood and Guts, so you will have Swerve and Hangman on opposite sides in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, that match is coming up in Nashville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think as we expected, you're getting a fully reformed Elite now with Page in the fold. And they are not having him officially join the Elite, but almost reluctantly joining the Elite because Swerve Strickland is on the other side.
And you could certainly have the outcome where, like, you could have Hangman, like, either do something, like, heinous to Swerve, or he gets the win for his team, like something where it necessitates a future title match for Hangman. Brandon Cutler is beaten down in the back area, and it's Darby Allin, who has made his return, addresses Jack Perry and says that Cutler just made his sacrifice, and he'll see him next week at Dynamite 250. And so Darby's back. And when they were listing the matches for next week, they didn't include this, but this was all but stated would be happening next week.
You would presume another person to enter Team AEW for Blood and Guts.
Don't we have the 5 now? Oh, no. We haven't even announced anyone besides Mark Briscoe and Swerve. Yeah, we had the teases, but yeah, you're right. You would probably assume Darby gets in there as well. So.
And then maybe a tag team to join them. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you do have the Acclaim. They have that story, but I don't know. I don't know if they'll make the cut or not. Also, we didn't mention they're also taping Collision tonight in Calgary. So they had a lot of people. It would not be surprising if they have Darby somewhere on Collision rather than bring him all the way to Calgary just for this.
You think Taz will call Collision? Because they did say Taz was in town and not in Dynamite in the building because of Jericho.
That's possible. They flipped the two, and Taz is on Collision and Nigel's on Dynamite. I guess they could do something like that. Next week, Swerve and Okada, Ospreay against MJF, and presumably Darby and Jack Perry as well. So that's a strong card on paper for next week's show. Mariah May, Willow Nightingale is the main event in the women's.
Oh, we had the Mercedes Moné celebration.
Oh, sorry, the Moné segment, of course. She comes out and she is having a toast, her victory toast to here's to Stephanie Vaquer's NXT deal.
Yeah.
She got there
Glad I could help
on
you out with your tryout.
there. I got you. You've passed the final test. She calls herself the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. And
awesome.
Man, did this get a great reaction. Like this was one of the most heated reactions the whole night just for that line.
Great line.
Maybe she was giving us a slight nod, this drink from a Hitman's bar.
Maybe she'll have her after party at
A must follow on Instagram if you're not hip to that. She tells Britt to wake up from her fantasy because you won't be facing me at All In, and said that facing me will be worse than a few herniated discs and a stroke. I'll leave you for dead, bitch. And out comes Britt Baker, and Baker takes out security, charges the ring, and Monet flees the ring. And you know what, Way? I think that this match is going to happen at All In. That's my thought.
Oh, do you? Wow.
I think so. I think Mercedes is in for a curveball.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. This was a very forgettable segment. You know, there's really nothing said that I think elevated this segment beyond what already happened last week.
Can we also mention like the shape that Britt has come back in? Like she looks ripped.
Oh yeah.
She's in incredible shape.
Yeah. I'm sure she's more than motivated.
She's been working with DDP. She's been like posting photos and stuff. So I mean, like,
cool.
She's, anyway.
Yeah, I just felt the segment could have used something a bit more special and memorable to come out of it. You know, beyond just having Mercedes come out, do the very stereotypical thing of like having security, and then Britt like blasting through the security as if it was nothing, without any even real effort. I felt like Britt Baker was, wow, like she was, blasted through everybody just like they were. Well, that tends to happen, I guess, with wrestling and security guards.
Yeah, Mercedes was trying to be Brett, and Baker was trying to be Goldberg. Just running through security.
I guess so. Sure.
Yeah.
They should have done the metal plate gimmick.
They could have gone back to that.
No,
it's an option.
Too many.
A classic angle. A classic angle
references.
in WCW history. Yeah. All right, now we go to Mariah May and Willow Nightingale. Mariah May is in black and pink. Willow. I like the fact we didn't go with everyone just with the black and pink. Instead, she brought back the black and yellow caution tape singlet.
She
Owen
made
Hart's.
it work too, man. Yeah, I don't think we've seen too many like caution tape Owen Hart tributes ever.
It's the most visually. It's of all of Owen's looks, it's the visual of it that stands out. But it was also like the period that I thought Owen was like the most squandered in his whole career, was in like the guys in the Nation of Domination during this time period. But you think back and like that, it was just such a weird option for him to go with. Like this idea of I'm going to go from like Canadian hero avenging my brother's screw job to yellow and black caution tape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say like a fondly remembered run of his, but like nonetheless, I kind of look at it as almost like Dusty's polka dots. Like they're just kind of like a
those
look.
Yellow and black tights and trunks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Willow early on hits a cannonball off of the apron. May comes back with a hip attack and a DDT. Willow teases the sharpshooter, but takes too long, so May capitalizes. And Mariah May delivers the Stratosphere, wanting to one-up Duke Hudson this week. And then somebody in a Sting hoodie starts distracting Willow as Tony Storm is distracting the referee. And with Willow distracted by this random person, Chris Statlander appears, nailing Willow, and it leads to a knee strike by Mariah May, but only gets a near fall. And then she goes for a cradle. Willow kicks out of that, and Storm is telling Mariah to finish her. But Willow comes back with a lariat, cannonball in the corner, and then lifts her up for a Death Valley driver, and it's countered by Mariah May with a victory roll as Mariah May gets the win.
Yeah, victory roll. I guess I thought this might have been a reference to Brett and Owen, but the victory roll in that match was a little bit different, or at least was countered a bit differently. A very good match between these two. You know, both of these are, I think, two of the division's best wrestlers, so some of the most consistent, and I continue to be so impressed by Mariah May, somebody who has come in and I think is still relatively young, but like has shown I think just a really high standard of in-ring quality, on top of all the character work that she's been able to do, with obviously tonight kind of being her the biggest night of her career.
Yeah, I was kind of like, I didn't have a strong reaction to it. I probably could have done without the run-in spot, only because it was like she still made her comeback afterward. It's almost as though if we're going to do it, like how effective was this as some heel tactic if it's not even costing her the match? It almost felt
Oh, she's still pissed off that it happened.
well, it's like you almost cost me the match. You threw
Well, maybe
me
it
off.
threw her off enough to drain her life bar that much more so that she couldn't kick out at the end.
Well, that's obviously where they are going to go with the rubber match between Willow and Chris Statlander, and Mariah May is in tears. She celebrates with Toni Storm, and they proceed up the ramp where she is presented with the Owen belt and the trophy by Toni Storm, and as soon as she gets this belt, wham, she takes out Toni Storm and then attacks Luther, and she is beating Toni Storm with the belt, kicks Toni in the ribs, and then Toni Storm is busted open. You thought Britt Baker was sending men flying. Mariah May took Luther, and Luther took the biggest bump he has taken in his AEW tenure, flying off the stage through a table. And then I thought this was just tremendous, to the point that I almost wish that Toni was not busted open from the belt shot, because then she takes the shoe. And I wish the shoe opened up the forehead. It would have been just that much better. But she takes the heel of the shoe and just drills her. And man, Toni Storm was covered in blood. I thought this ending. And then you've got the bloody Toni Storm, and they zoom out to reveal the match graphic for All In. Really great just shooting of this, as well as this match is now over top as they show the bloody Toni Storm. I thought this angle was excellent. You can say like we ended back-to-back Dynamites with kind of similar turns here, but I mean, this one was just the MJF Daniel Garcia thing was really built up for a week, and this has been the story since day one for Mariah May, and I just thought I loved this angle. I thought it was excellent.
It was fantastic. Yeah, I think you definitely felt. I mean, you can argue like MJF's turn was many months in the making at that point as well, just because of his whole babyface run. But I felt like this was a much more cohesive story that I think had a very clear beginning, middle, and end to it, at least with this association. And I like this one because I didn't see it coming. Like, not at this point. Of course, you knew like once Mariah May won the Owen Hart Cup that they would have to build up to a grudge between these two somehow leading to Wembley. But I thought that they would carry the sort of like amicable relationship that much longer. And for me, so much of that is because I think Mariah May has done such a great job of playing this like innocent, completely loyal understudy this entire time, that I did not see this sort of viciousness, within her, at least not so soon. She hit that shift really, really well in this one moment, and I thought it lit up this entire crowd so well. Toni Storm, I mean, you can argue maybe a little bit of over dramatic flair, but that is the character, and I think this is a perfect movie poster. This visual. Mariah May has just been so good, in this entire thing.
And she got down and like rubs the blood on her face, as you can see here as well. I thought like the closing visual was very strong, and again, like having the graphic above them was a nice added touch.
Yeah, so good. So this feels like a really hot title match for Wembley.
Yeah, I mean, we come out of it and we've got Swerve and Danielson, and we have Toni Storm and Mariah May locked in for August 25th. I thought the Danielson Hangman match was just like, that was a phenomenal television match. The women's match, it was good, and the angle was, I just thought, excellent. That was very strong. 4-way, don't know how, like, if they were rushed at all, but I thought that was a very, very good 4-way. And then the Stampede street fight, more so of an angle to keep things going between them. And I guess it comes down to your acceptance of forklift usage in professional wrestling.
I really enjoyed the Owen Cup this year. I think it's been the best one that they've had. I think it's been really well booked. You've had sort of, like a great side mission with Hangman Page. Well, yeah, as a mystery, and then also, of course, Jeff Jarrett as a breakout star of the Owen Hart tournament.
Which almost fell into their laps and was almost too great of a promo for. I mean, they tried to work him in here into the main event, but it was just something that I just don't know how much they could have forecasted it taking on such a life of its own as it did. Like, obviously it was going to be an emotional promo, but like that was just something that just added a completely new dynamic to this tournament.
But having the stakes attached to it this year makes the tournament feel that much more prestigious, and it kind of gives direction for every single participant heading into the tournament and for all the matches. And it culminated into something wonderful, I think, in both instances, but in particular, the women's division here with May and Storm, both of them elevating their roles to a different level. So I continue to think AEW, at least creatively, is on a real upswing. These are like, the past 2 weeks have been really excellent editions of Dynamite, in my opinion.
And we didn't even bring up the Ospreay promo. Like, that was a very solid segment to open the show. So, like, this was a very good 2-hour wrestling program, and it certainly feels like next week will be a pretty big episode as well.
And then Blood and Guts is after that.
That's right. So they've got a big string of shows coming up here. So those were our thoughts.
So what are the ratings? Like, what's sort of the rating story right now with regards to AEW? And what are you looking for this rating, John?
Well, I mean, for this one, I mean, it's really going to be the hook of like the Owen Hart Cup. Like tonight they would have had, it's not a crazy weekend. Like last week was a tough week when you're on the night before a 4th of July holiday, and they did a very good rating by that standard last week. Like typically you would see audiences take a bit of a dive, and they were actually slightly up from the week prior. So, I mean, they're sort of in that kind of like 0.23 range, where I think anything above a 0.23 is going to be viewed very favorably. And it's sometimes very hard to tell, like when like something will hit and when something is built up and doesn't get the boost that it does. Obviously, you're looking for patterns over time with their, various audiences and establishing a pattern rather than just a 1 week thing. And I don't feel it's a case of where they are just like loading up these shows with no intended purpose. Like this is just, they're peaking for August 25th, and they've got a lot of big things planned with the 250th episode, Blood and Guts, and then whatever follows after that hopefully you can establish this pattern. And we failed to mention this in the news, but the Athletics' Andrew Marchand had reported today that the NBA is finalizing its TV deals, and there is expected to be some kind of challenging potentially by Warner Brothers Discovery to try and match one of the offers. But I mean, that's going to be a tough fight for them. But once these NBA deals are sealed away, I mean, you should be thinking like that would expedite the process of finalizing the AEW deal, because that's going to be, it sounds like Warner Brothers Discovery is going to have to get to a life after NBA phase. And I don't know if they're quite there yet, but AEW, you would think it goes up that much more in a priority once this NBA series of deals are squared away. All right. Well, let's get to some feedback and super chats on tonight's edition of Dynamite.
Yeah, those of you watching live at youtube.com/postwrestling always have a chance to jump the line during our feedback section at any point during the show, just by sending a super chat of any amount. And the first one comes to us from Richard Kahn, who sends $5, who says, Danielson winning the title has to be the call. Losing yet another big match makes no sense. Swerve can regain at Wrestle Dream in Tacoma.
I don't know. I think you're going to get a lot of resistance from people on that kind of thing, where you have Danielson basically, like, you would think the Tacoma show is probably the end. Again, it's not a retirement. It's a stepping away from being a full-time active wrestler, but it almost feels like one of those, like, he wins it in August and you know that this is going to be a short title reign that at best it's going to last till the end of the year, and probably shorter than that. What is the gain versus someone like Swerve, who, as you just mentioned, Way, it just seems like he has found his footing in this role, and the Ospreay win has solidified him in a lot of people's mind. And do you interrupt that for this kind of short-term title reign for Danielson, even though it's great for that night and that celebration, but at what expense?
Sure. And don't get me wrong, like Swerve definitely has taken a big step up with the Ospreay win, but he's still far from being the solidified mainstay that you might be able to, have carry this company over the next several years. So he still needs those big establishing wins, and I think a win over Danielson at Wembley Stadium with that sort of crowd could be one of those establishing wins. I am also very curious to see how they portray Swerve in the build up to that, because he's definitely going to be booed, right? As I mean, they're probably going in as double baby faces, but man, like no one's booing Danielson over Swerve in that scenario. So
That match does seem so much better. Like not so much better, but seems like such an obvious one for Tacoma, for Wrestle Dream.
again, could be a rematch, but I mean, I do think you need a big Danielson match for Wembley. And him going for the title, possibly for the last time in this whatever type of retirement he wants to claim, is a big enough draw. All right, let's go to forum.postwrestling.com.
All right, let's go to Benjamin. Nigel McGuinness is a gift on commentary. His Bryan Danielson trolling is next level good. Good episode. All the book title programs for All In are good programs so far. I like Toni Storm foreshadowing the shoe spot by showing her heels on camera during the match as well.
Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. Let's go up next to Brian from New Jersey, who says, it wasn't a love story. It was a horror movie. Great closing angle with an incredible visual. I thought Danielson versus Hangman was very good and ended strong, but I remember liking their earlier matches more. This show really flew by with the 4 matches and multiple promo segments. Only 4 matches, really. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, Danielson and Hangman was over 25 minutes. So that was pretty significant, right? Like that first hour was between the Ospreay promo and the Danielson Hangman match. Like that, you only had the one match in the first hour. Andrew from Cape Breton. The show was a fine episode with great wrestling, the usual fare. It feels like they have a lot more focus going into Wembley this year, but even have storyline implications and matches that could work at All Out. I was very surprised Bryan won, and I can see Hangman pinning Swerve at Blood and Guts, setting up a 3-way match, not setting up a 3-way match, but setting up Swerve versus Hangman at All Out. The main event angle, though, was something else. I know the women have had violent matches, but I don't think they've done a violent angle like that. I remember when I was a kid, WCW used the high heel shoe a lot as a weapon, and it never really had that much impact. That changed tonight as it looked like Mariah was killing Tony with that shoe. It was done so quickly and came out of nowhere. Another hot angle to finish Dynamite. The shoe.
Yeah, this is kind of 2 weeks now where we've had these like sort of shocking. Well, we had 2 shocking turns, 2 consecutive Dynamites.
And whatever restrictions they're having now, more so with, I mean, they are getting the bitch out a lot more, but you are hearing more like other, they're getting censored on other words. But when it comes to blood, there do not appear to be any restrictions. Like, if anything, you could argue there's a bit too much blood, which they kind of go in these spurts of up and down.
Yeah, well,
we got Garcia last week. We had Hangman on Saturday. We had Hangman and Danielson tonight, leading to Toni Storm bleeding out at the end.
And you've got Blood and Guts in 2 weeks, so that's definitely going to be quite the visual. I can expect somebody to bleed at 250 at this point.
Maybe you should have everyone come out at the end of the night and everyone bleeds on the stage and
just
waves.
Thanks
for
mass
250
mass bloodletting
episodes
in celebration of AEW.
What better way than to say goodnight to North Little Rock, Arkansas?
Very morbid. All right, let's go to Curtis from the 519, who says, "Wow, what an ending to Dynamite! A great swerve with Mariah being the one to turn on Toni. Interesting, they turned her into the heel, heading into her home country at All In, but nonetheless, it made for an incredible end to the show. I don't think that'll be that'll affect things at all. Like I don't necessarily like Toni Storm is so over as a character, and I think they're going to make it so that there's so much sympathy for Toni Storm that I don't think that's at any risk of happening. She can always just cut a promo on how much she dislikes England. I was shocked to see Hangman lose, but Swerve versus Bryan 2 will be a great main event. Hangman Danielson is my favorite series of matches AEW has put on, and it was great to see them add another fantastic match to their catalog. Do we see Hangman force the Elite into adding him to the All-In main event as payback for him joining Blood and Guts? Or maybe the title match at All Out provided Swerve wins? All Out, I like as a much more of an idea. I think main events should usually be a singles match. I think the build is a lot cleaner. They've already done the 3-way with Joe, Swerve, and Paige, trying to tell one rivalry along with just Joe kind of like being around, being like, "Hey guys, I'm here too." I don't really think that should be the case here. But All Out is a perfect scenario for, Paige getting Swerve afterwards. He says, altogether, great week of Dynamite TV, and the road to All In has me all in on AEW once again. Question, what has been the better series of AEW matches, Hangman versus Danielson or Hangman versus Swerve? To me, it's Hangman and Swerve. I just find them the more memorable series, but they've both been great.
Yeah, I don't have like a strong preference. Like the Hangman Swerve match from last year, the Texas Death Match was, to me, I mean, you would probably place that maybe above like all the combinations of the different matches with Danielson and Hangman and Swerve. But the common denominator for me is like, Hangman just has like, he had like Jay White had one of his best performances this year with Hangman. And it's just like, this guy consistently has these, just regardless of the opponent. Like, I don't think we always talk about Hangman as like that world-class level, but he absolutely is.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was quite some time in between there where he didn't really have a whole lot going on. Like, we're talking the whole Punk, sort of weirdness, where he wasn't really booked in a prominent role. And it's great for me to see that he's back in that spotlight again.
All right. Matthew, I'm going to hold off on this question just because it's really not related to Dynamite at all. It's not that it's a bad question. It's a very good question, but we will save this for next week with maybe for Brandon Thurston or a different show to get to because we're just kind of focused on Dynamite at the moment. Let's go to Cody here. If that doesn't go down as the top edition of Dynamite this year, we're in for an absolutely tremendous episode down the road. What an awesome 2 hours of wrestling. I thought the men's final benefited greatly from being the opener as the length of the match became more uncertain. Bryan winning was a nice surprise, but with all of the moving parts at the top of the in the top of the men's division, the world title doesn't quite seem set in stone yet, at least as a one-on-one contest. A great thread throughout the show and one that we'll continue to see. And that closing angle, we've seen some pretty violent moments involving the women's division in AEW's history, but that may take the cake. The turn itself is not a surprise, but just how quickly they went to it and the visceral nature of the attack itself will make that a moment wrestling fans talk about for a long time. Certainly one way to remind people that AEW's women's division is in tremendous shape despite Vaquer signing with WWE. Both companies have tremendous talent, and I truly believe women's wrestling has never been stronger in North America at the very least.
You think that's one of the conversation points this year? Do you feel like any sort of like change in AEW's women's division over the past year? And do you think the criticisms of that being like one of its lacking sort of departments is different now?
I think the women's division AEW has greatly increased and improved. And I think that it's a combination. Like they've had some strong players, but they have only added to them. They've also added, a really big name in Mercedes. And this Toni Storm, Mariah May angle has clicked with a lot of people. And I think it's given them a lot more focus and time. And it just seems like a lot of the women have been, like Willow Nightingale to me has had a real breakout year just from a personality standpoint where her promos are and that she's been elevated. I think Chris Statlander's in a better role now as a heel. You've got Serena Deeb on the back burner. It just,
and this is without the stars you've already built in Jamie Hayter, DMD.
Who've been gone. I think the women's division is in a very strong place in AEW at the moment, especially like looking like maybe 2 years ago and where it is now. I think it's silenced a lot of the criticisms that had been out there previously.
Let's go to Jordan from the Bronx, who says, I love that Mariah May didn't hesitate to do what many people assumed Tony would do first. It was vicious, and the ending shot was something out of a comic book. Didn't expect Danielson to win the Owen, but now I'm extremely excited for the possibility of getting Final Countdown and Ain't Nobody by Shaka Khan playing in Wembley Stadium in the main event. Finally, I don't know what your budgets are, but I use YouTube Premium to avoid ads, and it makes YouTube a much more enjoyable experience. I can't imagine watching that WrestleMania 40 documentary with ads. That sounds truly awful. Yes.
Oh, it was. An experience on YouTube I have never endured before.
A lot of people agreeing with that statement.
I don't know how that cannot be one of your takeaways. Like, listen, I don't know how many YouTube videos I have watched, and some at great length in the history of this streaming service that goes back 18 years. I have never had an experience like this WrestleMania documentary that every 3 minutes I was being interrupted with ads. Like I have a pretty wide patience level, and I just could not believe like just the audacity to make me like, it was like, I dare you to keep watching this. That's what I felt like. I felt like I was being like teased.
I feel like I should place an ad in the YouTube video right here.
This is exactly where you put it, right in the middle of my rant. Next up is Damien from Connecticut. The ending of Dynamite capped off what may be a top 5 episode of the year. I was fully convinced that Tony would be the one turning, but I'm so glad it wasn't. Tony bleeding an absolute crimson mask sealed the deal for me on this feud. I'm very hyped for the match at All In. To open the show, Ospreay proves why he is ranked as one of the best in the world. Not only can he wrestle, but that promo was very, very good and has me hyped for the future of the rivalry with MJF. Danielson and Page have limitless amounts of chemistry together, and boy, oh boy, was I happy to see them tear it up tonight. Jericho being a delusional heel that is now becoming sadistic was not the way I thought his would go either, but I'm really loving the progression. Overall, AEW has been on a downturn this year, but episodes like this give me hope that they can right the ship and really get back to why we loved it in the first place. 10 Luther delayed flips into tables out of 10.
All right. Lastly, let's go to Muggin, who says Dynamite started hot with Ospreay and Friedman, the men's finals with Danielson penciled in for Wembley, and ended hot with Mariah May turning on Toni Storm with that third act gut punch. It was, as the youngins say, cinema. It was the pro wrestling version to All About Eve. The middle of the show had its share of hits and misses. Jericho needs to vanish. Mercy's double champion celebration felt like a rerun. The 250th episode looks loaded, and I bet MJF and Ospreay will be more of an angle than a match. It's too soon. Big ups to Willow's Owen Hart homage with her caution singlet. Yes. All right.
Okay. Well, that is going to bring an end to episode 249 of Rewind-A-Dynamite.
That is correct. Wow.
I don't know if we've missed a week in there, but we've gone. I don't know. I would have to look back. If we missed a week, it was very rare, if at all, that we've missed a Wednesday.
I don't know what scenario would have led to us missing a week. Like travel, we usually travel on a Thursday, so I don't think we would have missed the Wednesday show.
This is one for Brad the Archivist to fact check for us. If we ever missed a week, is it episode 250 of Rewind-A-Dynamite next Wednesday? I'd say maybe it could be.
I'll double check on that.
Yes, we'll have to have a big episode. Or maybe we should go down to North Little Rock, Arkansas to do the show next week.
Oh, sure. I'll see you there.
The Simmons Bank Arena will have us on standby.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to bring an end to the show. But again, thanks to all of you for tuning in tonight, checking out the Carmelo Hayes interview. All 3 interviews are up on the Post Wrestling YouTube channel, as is today's Pollock and Thurston, where we talked about the press conference at Money in the Bank that people might have seen, and a lot of other topics.
The pipe bomb here. Find out the exclusive words. What did John Pollock have to say about all of you guys criticizing him?
Yes.
All right.
I'm open to all interpretations.
Sitting there cross-legged on StreamYard, just letting the world know exactly how you felt.
So that is up on today's show. Also, you can check out Up Next from Tuesday with Braden and Davey. And coming up this week, we will have the Lenita Erickson interview on Thursday, MCU later on the Cafe, Rewind to SmackDown, Collision Course, and
the long and winding Royal Road coming out this Saturday
yes.
as well.
Saturday, Cameron Lee is going to be joining WH Park. They're doing one of WH Park's famous retrospectives. And this Saturday, the subject is Jumbo Tsuruta. Someone who some will claim the greatest of all time. So quite a deep dive, I'm sure, that we are in store for on Saturday, going through the career of Jumbo Tsuruta, who passed away in May of 2000, 24 years ago. So there you go. That's all coming up this week. And again, postwrestling.com/G1 is where you can join the G1 Climax contest. It's open now. It's free to enter. You just have to go join and make all of your picks, and then they'll be locked in, and you have your chance to come out the victor. And today, confirmation on the show that Brandon Thurston will be defending his crown that he won last year in the post wrestling block.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. He is the statistician here, so I think he's going to have very special picks.
Yeah, I don't know if Python can assist his pick making, but that's kind of like performance enhancing drugs for this type of a contest, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
we run a clean contest here, okay? Python free, script free.
I think I would allow it. I think it would fall under the Alexandria York strategy.
Okay. And on the G1 front, next Wednesday on Pollock and Thurston, we're going to have Walker Stewart on the show, who will be calling the G1 this year in Japan with Chris Charlton. So he will be on right before he flies over to Japan. So that's for next week's Pollock and Thurston. But that wraps it up. And of course, everyone, thank you to Wei Ting. And that's it. Goodbye.